Last night, a guy rolled off the bench who hasn't played at all, really, and threw 6 touchdowns for USC. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. A Lincoln Riley quarterback
It's interchangeable with the previous quarterback.
doing really well in that quarterback-friendly system. So I threw that out there, and I knew I was trolling a little bit. And I figured that it would get response. I think it ended up in some of the cases being some really good like football conversation, but there is a subset of Bear fan that have already dove in full, like face first on Caleb Williams, and they are riding. And they one guy even had Caleb save me in his Twitter profile, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on here? So I interacted with the Caleb Bros for a big portion of last night.
Oh, God.
One of the guys, and I just finally was just like, you don't want to have an actual conversation. You just want to think that you're right, and that's okay.
But what are give me the bullet points of what constitutes a Caleb bro, other than somebody who's being reasonable about the future of the Bears?
They regurgitate the talking point of he's a generational talent.
Okay.
That's their thing. That they already know that he's better than Justin because he's a generational talent. How do they know that? They haven't even watched the games. But draft people have told them that. And that my opinion on him doesn't count as much as draft people. And I'm like, okay. I mean, that's a whole cottage industry where those people are never held accountable. Never. As much as I enjoy, I love talking to the people that cover the draft the way that they do. And as much as I love like Dane Brugler or Mel Kiper or any of the other draft people, there's never any accountability for them being dead wrong on specifically quarterbacks, which they often are, which people who work in NFL front offices who have a little bit more accountability in these such things, they're often wrong about it too. It's a really difficult position to scout. And I would just offer to the Caleb Bros. And so you know where I stand on Caleb. I think that he is an intriguing prospect. I think that there are some plays that he makes that not a lot of quarterbacks, college or pro, can make. I also think that if you're being fair in your assessment of Caleb Williams, if you're really being fair, some of the problems that Caleb has are the same problems that the quarterback who's currently the Bears quarterback has. He fumbles. He doesn't always play well on script, like in the pocket. And when you've watched him against defenses that are as close to NFL defenses, he struggles. Like the game this year against Utah, where he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great, and the game against Notre Dame the week before, where he was terrible. Here's my thing, and I got into this conversation with this guy where he was like, look, this is the way that it's done in the NFL, that you have to take the top quarterback. That's the way it's done. And so I retorted to the guy, Dan. I said, who are the top 3 teams in the NFC right now?
Okay.
Name them.
Top 3 teams are obviously the Niners are probably still first.
Right.
And then you've got the grouping of the Eagles, the Cowboys.
Stop.
Lions.
Where was the quarterback of the Giants drafted? I'm sorry, for the Niners drafted.
Last.
Last overall, right?
Yes.
The quarterback for the Eagles, where was he taken?
2nd round.
Where was the quarterback of the Cowboys taken?
4th round.
Those 3 teams have this in common. And my point to this guy was the conventional old school way of thinking is that, well, you have to go out and draft a quarterback. The success of those 3 teams should tell you that the other way that you can build a team is to build a team and then get a more than competent. I don't want to damn any of these quarterbacks because I think all 3 of them are really good. More than competent quarterback play inside of the nest that you have built, and you can be successful. You can win that way. Now, on the flip side, there's a team like the Jets that do seem to have everything else, and they got the quarterback wrong.
Well, they did, and they continued to get it wrong because they were held hostage by the guy that they just brought in to fix it.
Yes. So this idea that, well, the only way to do it is if there's a quarterback at the top of the draft. That's the only way. Like, I was like, why are you being? I hit him with the Star Wars. I was like, only Siths speak in absolutes. And he was like, no, you're right about those 3 teams, but just those 3 teams. I'm like, those are the 3 best teams in the NFC right now. The teams that did it kind of backwards. And then when you look at some of the highest picks at quarterback and the guys, like the hit rate on, that was another thing. This other guy, or maybe it was the same guy, this other guy was like, I said to him, what about the idea?
What about Danks?
What about the idea that if you think that Fields is average to above average, and you were to take the number 1 pick, in a year where people are frothing to get Caleb Williams, and you make a better deal, because I think there's a better deal out there for Ryan Poles for the number 1 this year than last year. What do you think of the idea of getting multiple first-round picks and adding it to a roster that's getting better? And then this guy was like, no, you've got a chance at the quarterback, and the quarterback is the only thing. And I'm like, wait, you mean to tell me that if I got a first-round left tackle and Marvin Harrison Jr., along with multiple first-round picks going forward, and I drop those 2 guys onto this Bears roster right now, that you wouldn't think with Justin as the quarterback? And if you want it, you could go and get a quarterback that you think is decent in later rounds and try to develop him too. And that wasn't sufficient either. And I'm like, what are we doing? Why?
Well, you're not going to if somebody is just an absolute Kool-Aid drinking fanboy, there's no point arguing.
I try to give people the benefit of the doubt that maybe there are things that they aren't considering or seeing. And this is what I would say to anyone who is a huge fan of Caleb Williams. And I understand why people are fans of him. He does incredible stuff. Instead of just listening to even me or any other draft person that's done a profile on Caleb Williams, go back and watch the Notre Dame game. Go back and watch this year's Utah game. And go back and watch the 3rd quarter of USC's game against Colorado. Go and do that. And then tell me that you don't see some of the same flaws that you think are death knells with Justin. Look at how much he's fumbled this year. And then keep in mind, he's much smaller than Justin. And I'm not sure he's as good of a teammate as Justin is. I'm not saying he's a bad teammate, but I think there's been some questions about him. Put all of that in a blender and see what you come up with.